Welcome to the Nicolas Procel podcast. I know these first videos get disproportionately viewed, so it's not only an introduction, but it's also a message to the future. I know that people are going to be coming back to this in 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, a decade, 2 decades, perhaps even half a century. Who knows? Depends how far I get in life. Likewise, it's interesting to note that my future family will come back to this. My children will come back to this. So hopefully I can do the future justice. I'd like to begin with an introduction of my fundamental goals. Firstly, the fact that I, myself, am in existence is a miracle, for lack of a better term. The odds against my existence are massive. And the other day, I was thinking about death. And I was thinking about life and the struggles of life and the struggles of the human experience. And I thought to myself, people always presuppose that death is this negative thing, but is it really worthwhile to go through the struggles of life? And in essence, my conclusion of that session of cogitation was that I'll bet on life because it doesn't matter since I will be deceased in the end. But I thought to myself, what would justify that existence? What would make that life worth having been lived? What justifies it? So I thought, my overarching goal is to live in a way that maximally justifies my existence. And likewise, somewhat related to that is to live in a way that maximizes my human experience. So I wish to excel in the primary domains of human endeavor. I wish to take my potential and realize as much of it as I possibly can. And frankly, in a sense, knowing that I have one shot at this and one chance, I am a bit curious as to how far I can get in life. In order to realize such a goal and to do such a thing, learning is required. We start knowing so little that we inevitably commit blunders. We attach ourselves to the wrong goals. We identify with groups and tribes because we don't know better. We don't know any alternatives. We fall prey to our ignorance repeatedly. So we must learn. We must learn and acquire the information necessary to live life in a way that maximizes the progress we can make toward our ideals and minimizes the blunders we make in that journey. Minimize suffering, regret, mistakes, wasted time. So I have to learn. And my thought is that if I'm going to spend all this time learning, and I wish to learn from the greatest minds, and I wish to converse with the greatest minds and talk to them about their ideas and push back on the parts I disagree or don't understand. And so if I'm going to put in all this effort, all this study to learn all these things and reach these people, get access to them, and then speak to these people, then I may as well share that with other people in my position. I wish to help people like me in their attempts to understand existence and to maximize it. And, well, moreover, I would do this even if it weren't the case, but the sharing of that information is free, so it works out just fine. I can do it at no cost to myself. I also wish, as part of that maximization of the human experience, a part of that is social, of course, because we as humans are fundamentally social beings. We're some of the most social species in the world. And so a large part of the maximization of our experience comes from social maximization. So part of that is relationships, of course. A part of that is hierarchical position in society. So I do wish to rise there as well. But we have this confusing drive toward altruism and pro-social behavior. I don't know why. But for that reason, something compels me. I assume it's just the wiring of my brain shaped through Darwinian evolution, but something compels me to help improve society and contribute to humanity insofar as I can. I'm only one person. But I believe that's part of maximizing my experience, is to help other people do the same with theirs. So that is my goal, in part, with this podcast. That's partially why I begin this. So the goals of my podcast, fundamentally, it's to have interesting conversations. Interesting conversations with people who know what they're talking about. I wish to learn, and I wish to clarify ideas. Clarify both my own and the ideas of others, their ideas. I wish to reach the truth. That is my overarching goal in terms of knowledge, is to reach the truth. Because the way I see it, truth is the information that most accurately describes and represents reality. So therefore, any false ideas, falsity, is information that does not accurately represent reality. And if it doesn't represent reality accurately, it is less useful, it's less valuable, and in fact, it can even be downright harmful. If you think about it, in any kind of predictive model, let's say a predictive economic model, any false information you input into that model will result in inaccurate predictions. So in essence, the further you are from truth in your mind, the further the information in your mind is from truth, the more you are in your predictions and your actions, therefore, because you take actions to realize a predicted future or values that you predict will pay off in the future. The more falsity in your mind, the more you will veer from that ultimate goal. And I think that is harmful for the individual, and it is harmful for the collective as well. So my goal is to spread the truth, my overarching goal, and to share knowledge and ideas that benefit me and that could benefit you, the viewer or listener. I believe that ideas should clash likewise. That if an idea is worthwhile, it doesn't require rhetoric. It doesn't require emotions. It doesn't require strawmanning your opponent. It doesn't require attacking your opponent, labeling your opponent. It doesn't require tribalism, identifying to a group. If your idea is truly, if your idea has merit, then it should stand up to rational scrutiny. That's what I believe. So for that reason, I don't care at all about being wrong. I don't give a damn about being wrong, frankly. I want to acquire the most useful information so I can make the most of my life, and that requires clarifying what the truth is. And in order to do that, you take viewpoints. I take my viewpoint as well as the viewpoint of someone else, educated, who has deeply thought about whatever the topic we're speaking about on, and we clash those ideas. We pit them against each other, head to head, trial by fire. And whichever idea stands up to scrutiny most and comes out on top is, assuming it's a good faith debate where both parties are actually attempting to get to the truth will surface. So that is my goal. That's what I wish to do with this podcast. I wish to push back with ideas I wish to push back on ideas that I disagree with or don't understand or otherwise find to be false. I wish to push back on them. And if they turn out to be true, then I wish to adopt them as fast as possible to prevent mistakes in myself. And if they are false, I wish to show that they are false so that other people don't adopt them and fall prey to that falsity. Likewise, firstly, I want to commit to accuracy. I have no interest in sharing inaccurate information. I think it's harmful for others, of course. And if I'm going to share information, and sharing information is free, I don't see what I would have to gain from sharing false information. I have nothing to sell. I have no agendas. I have no religious agenda. I'm not trying to convert anybody to anything. I have no political agendas because I like to look at issues on a case-by-case basis, not with some kind of tribalistic label. I have nothing to convince you of, fundamentally. I don't care what you believe. I don't give a damn at all of what you believe. I just wish to share ideas, beneficial ideas, in an attempt to do the most I can to contribute to the individual, for the individual to have a more beneficial existence, and to society at large, so that we can improve the existence of every individual constituting that society. So those are my goals with the podcast. In my personal goal to excel in all primary domains of human endeavor, one part of that is to excel in the podcasting space. It's part social, part intellectual excellence. So I wish to have among the best podcasts in the world. And that's a mighty tall order. It's an ambitious endeavor. And that's fine because, again, I'm going to be dead anyways. And if I fail at this, no one will ever know who I am because I will never reach prominence. And so in that case, saying that I wish to have one of the biggest podcasts in the world doesn't matter because I will have such a small audience that who cares? I probably won't even encounter them. If I don't succeed, 1, no one will notice, or 2, I will be dead, in which case I don't care. But as long as I'm alive, I seek that excellence because I don't know what else to do. I wish to learn because without information, I don't know how I would live. I would be lost to the whims of a poor life or even an average one, so to speak. A life in which I drift through my existence in an unintentional way and commit various blunders and waste time. And I don't want to do that. So I don't know how I would do. I don't know how I would go about without learning. I've been learning for, frankly, a brief time because I am a young man. But in that time, I don't know how I would continue without learning and constantly updating the bank of information and skills I have in my head because I carry those for the rest of my life. So I might as well have them as high as possible because they serve me. They serve me and they will serve me forever. So I wish to share that with people. But in order to excel in the podcasting space and provide as much value to the viewer as I can, I will require a handful of things. Firstly, I don't understand why so many people, podcast hosts and personalities alike, lose touch with their audiences. They reach a certain level of prominence and become disconnected from the reality of the average individual. They lose touch. And I don't wish to lose touch. I don't want to fall prey to that same thing. I don't want to, I want to help and I want to provide value. So for that reason, I will read every single comment left on this channel. Likewise, feedback will help. Feedback will help me progress this as fast as possible and provide as much value as I can. So if there's anything that I do with this podcast that you think I could do better, or anything I do that you think I should not do, anything that I could add or subtract from this podcast to maximize the value I provide, please tell me in the comments. I would greatly appreciate it. And as I said, I will read every single comment until it is completely unfeasible to do so, until I absolutely do not have enough time to do so. Another way I can maximize this podcast is through social proof. And that will allow me to have more guests on the show, as well as more interesting guests, the more elusive and difficult guests, the guests that don't go on many podcasts. The more social proof this podcast has, the more access I will have to people like those. And I will have access to the greatest minds and the most successful. Because the most successful and the greatest minds want to go on the greatest and most successful podcasts. It makes sense. Were I one of those people, I wouldn't want to go on a smaller podcast, a minor podcast. Because usually the reason a podcast is minor is because the interviewer is substandard or the value they provide is not great. In essence, at least today on the internet, the dominance of certain podcasts and channels is largely meritocratic. It's what the viewers want. And it's the quality of the podcast as well. So if I can greater guests will want to go on a podcast that is of maximized quality. So I wish to have maximized quality, but a part of the signaling to guests that a podcast is of maximal quality is the social proof, the numbers, unfortunately. It's a heuristic we humans use. So for that reason, subscribing to the podcast or leaving a review, depending on where you listen, ideally both, will contribute to the count, the numbers, the quantification of social proof for the podcast. And that will help me have better guests on. But it will also attract more viewers. It's a self-reinforcing loop. Because I don't know about you, but for myself, if I see a podcast If I see a podcast episode and I notice it has 100 views, I think to myself, I don't want to watch that. It's probably not good. There's a reason that podcast is tiny. Maybe it's tiny simply because it's just starting, as mine is currently. Or maybe it's tiny because it never grew because it's not that great. So I tend to pick the larger podcasts because they are proven to be good. They're proven by the exact number of subscribers. If the podcast has 5 million subscribers, that's 5 million people who vouch for how good the podcast is in a way that's rather an honest signal, because it shows that they are willing to subscribe so that they are notified of episodes so that they come back. They wish to come back. And seeing that 5 million people want to come back to a podcast indicates that it must be good. So for that reason, subscriptions, reviews, very beneficial to the podcast. So that is what you could do to contribute to this. And lastly, active participation. One thing that I'm surprised more podcasts don't do is allow for active participation of the viewer. So I would like for you to suggest guests, topics, and questions in the comments. So guests you would like to have on, topics you would like to have discussed, questions you would like for me to ask them. I'm not sure if I'm going to do this, but more than likely I will have on community posts and perhaps on other social media platforms, votes, polls, so you can democratically select guests for me to have on the show, as well as submit questions that I can ask the guest that you want me to ask. So specifically, that would be votes, polls on guests, and then commenting. I will put out a post so you can comment questions you would like for me to ask, and then I would ask the most liked ones, the ones that the most people select that they want asked. So that's about all there is to say on the topic that I can think of at the moment. I don't know what the future has in store for me. And I'm interested to see what happens. I'm just now seeing how long this introduction has been. It's been 18 minutes long, which that's a lot longer than I was expecting. But anyway, I hope I can do humanity justice, and I hope I can do my existence justice and justify my choice to make the most of my existence. I hope I can justify that. So that's my goal. And we'll see how I do. The future will tell, time will tell, posterity will reveal whether or not I succeed or fail.